Welcome to educator.com. This lesson is about solving multiplication and division equations. In this lesson, you're going to learn about solving multiplication and division equations. An application of this could be to find the cost of a single item that is usually sold in bulk. Vocabulary for this lesson are division property of equality and multiplication property of equality. An arithmetic representation of division property of equality would be if you had 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So that's our original equation, and the division property of equality tells us if we divide both sides by the same number, our values should still be the same. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 will give me 2. 4 divided by 2 will give me 2. So if you notice, by dividing both sides by the same number, I still get equal values. An algebraic representation of that could be A times B equals C. If I divide both sides by B, the B and the B will cancel here, and A will equal C over B. So originally when it was A times B, it equaled C alone. And now that we're dividing by B, the B's cancel, but now the C still remains to be divided by B. The multiplication property of equality also tells us that we need to multiply the same value to both sides. So the arithmetic version could be that 3 plus 2 equals 5. If I multiply both sides by 2, 3 plus 2 is 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times 2 here is still 10. So by multiplying both sides by the same value, we keep equal values on both sides of the equal sign. An algebraic representation of that could be A times B equals C. If I multiply both sides times D, I now get A, B, D equals CD. So originally the A, B equaled the C, so I still have the A, B, and the C, but now we have multiplied both sides by D, and the values are still equal. We're going to be using these two properties to solve solve multiplication and division equations, because division is the inverse or opposite operation to multiplication, and multiplication is the inverse or opposite to division. And that's what we were talking about here, inverse operations. So you've already seen that addition and subtraction are inverse operations. They cancel each other out or undo each other. And we're going to be using multiplication and division in this lesson because these operations cancel each other out. Let's solve the equation using division. I have 8x equals 56. I'm doing a multiplication here, 8 times x. So let's use the inverse property so that we can get rid of the 8 and isolate the x, find out the value of the x. The opposite of times 8 is to divide by 8. 8 divided by 8 simplifies to 1. And 1 times x, or anything times 1, is just the number itself, or the variable itself. So 1 times x is x. And 56 divided by 8 is 7. Let's use substitution to check our answer. I'm going to take x equals 7, the 7, and put it back in here. So 8 times 7 equals 56, and that is correct. So x equals 7. Negative 6 times y equals 42. So negative 6 times y equals 42. The opposite of multiplying by negative 6 is to divide by negative 6. Negative 6 divided by negative 6 simplifies to 1. And 1 times y is just y. I've isolated the variable. Now remember to think about your signs. A positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 42 divided by 6 is 7. Let's use substitution to check our answer. I'm going to substitute negative 7 in place of the y. Negative 6 times negative 7. Negative times a negative is a positive, and 6 times 7 is 42. And yes, the answer checks out. So y equals negative 7. Let's try another example of solving the equation using division, this time with a decimal. Negative 0.9 times c equals 1.89. So the opposite of multiplying by 0.9 is to divide by 0.9. 0.9 divided by 0.9 simplifies to 1. And 1 times c is c. Let's do our division problem on the side here. Remember that you cannot divide when you have a decimal out front. So let's move the decimal to behind the 9, making it a 9. Remember, what you do outside, you must do inside as well. So now my new division problem is 18.9 divided by 9. 9 will go into 18 twice, perfectly. Bring down the 9. And 9 will go into 9 once. And remember to bring your decimal up. So c equals 2.1. Let's use substitution to check our answer. I'm going to substitute 2.1 in place of the c. 2.1 times 9. Oops, 0.9. That decimal will be important. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. And I don't need to multiply through by 0 because I know that my answers will all be 0. 2 decimal places. 1, 2 gives me 1.89. And yes, that's correct. So c equals 2.1. Let's create our own equations and then solve them by using division. You plan to buy a jacket that costs $52. How much must you save each week in order to buy the jacket in 8 weeks? So we're looking for how much money we need to save each week so that we can hit our goal of saving $52 after 8 weeks. Our variable is going to represent what we don't know. And what we don't know is how much we need to save each week. So I'm going to call that S for saving. So if I save S amounts for 8 weeks, 8 times S, I will reach my goal of $52. The opposite of multiplying times 8 is dividing by 8. 8 divided by 8 cancels to 1. 1 times S is S. So it's going to reveal to me, after I've isolated the S, how much I have to save each week. 8 doesn't go into 52 evenly, so I'm going to set up my division problem here. It goes into 52 approximately 6 times, which is 48. I'm going to add a decimal and continue dividing. 52 minus 48 is 4. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times perfectly. So it's 6.5 or $6.50. So each week, if I save $6.50, after 8 weeks, I'll hit my goal of $52. Let's check our answer and make sure we're correct. So $6.50 times 8. 0, 40, 48 plus 4 is 52, 2 decimal places. Yes, $52 after 8 weeks. So how much must we save each week in order to buy the jacket in 8 weeks? We must save $6.50. Each soccer team in a league needs 8 players, 2 alternates, and a coach. How many teams can be formed from 242 people? Check your answer. Well, let's first check out how many people are on the team. We have 8 players plus the 2 alternates plus 1 coach. That gives me 11 people. The total is 242. So how many teams can be formed? That's my variable, T. T for teams. So 11 people times this many number of teams, T teams, will equal my total amount of people, 242. So let's divide by 11, the opposite of multiplying by 11, and find out how many teams we can make. This cancels to 1, and 1 times T equals T. I'm going to do my division problem on the side here. 11 will go into 24 twice, approximately, giving me 22. And that'll leave me with 22, so 2 again. So I could have 22 complete teams of 11 people to meet my total of 242. Let's check our answer. Let's substitute 22 in place of this T. So 22 times 11. 2, 2. Hold the place, 2, 2. 2, 4, 2. And yes, it checks out. So my total is 22. Let's answer our question with a unit. 22 teams. And we've also checked our answer by multiplying. Let's solve some equations using multiplication. You may usually see your problem set up looking more like a fraction. 8 divided by 7 equals 9. Remember that this fraction line also means division. A fraction is in fact division. The opposite of dividing by 7 is going to be to multiply by 7. Because here what you're going to have is 7 over 7. And 7 divided by 7 equals 1. So these are going to cancel out to 1. And remember, just like in the division equations, 1 times a is a. Any number times 1 is itself. And 9 times 7 is 63. Let's check our answer using substitution. 63 divided by 7 is, in fact, 9. So yes, it's correct. So a equals 63. Let's try one with a decimal. T divided by 1.7 equals 6. The opposite of dividing by 1.7 is to multiply both sides by 1.7. The multiplication property of equality. This is going to cancel to 1. 1 times t is just t. Now I have to multiply a decimal. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 4 is 10, with 1 decimal place, 10.2. I'm going to go back and check my answer using substitution. In place of the t here, I'm going to use 10.2. So 10.2 divided by 1.7 should give me 6. Let's write our division problem here. 10.2 divided by 1.7. You cannot divide with a decimal on the outside, so I'm going to move it over once and move it over once. So now I'm looking at 17 into 102. Well, supposedly my answer should be 6 if I've done it correctly, so I'm going to try 6. 17 times 6, 4, 6, 10, 102. Yes, it is correct. So we've done our problem correctly, and t equals 10.2. Let's solve some more equations using multiplication, and this time let's look at including a negative value. Y over negative 45 equals 3.2. The opposite of dividing by negative 45 is to multiply by negative 45. A negative divided by a negative will become a positive, and 45 divided by 45 is 1. So that would give me 1 times y, a positive 1 times y is y. And over here, a positive times a negative is a negative. Let's just write our negative in right now so we don't forget about it at the end. And 45 times 3.2. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Hold the place. 15, carry 1, 12, 13. 0, 14. 1 makes 14 and 1 with just 1 decimal place. So 144. Negative 144. All right, here's an equation that looks a little strange. It seems as though we've already isolated the p, but in fact, it's not completely isolated. It has a negative with it. So what we could do here is negative p divided by negative 1. And remember to do the same to both sides, divide by negative 1. So now, if we have a negative divided by a negative, that'll give us the positive. And you know that the positive is the same as having it isolated. So p. Positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 14 divided by 1 is just 14. So p equals negative 14. Notice it seems as though the negative has been moved to the other side. But in fact, what you did was divide by a negative 1. You could also multiply by a negative 1 because you know that the rules for multiplying integers and dividing integers is the same. Let's create an equation from a word problem and solve it using multiplication. Your friend lives 0.9 miles from school. You live 3 times as far from the school. How far from the school do you live? All right, so if you take how far you live from the school, let's call that F for how far, and you do the opposite, you divide by 3, you'll end up with how far your friend lives, which is 0.9 miles, or 0.90. Because you live 3 times as far, so we want to break up or divide how far you live to equal the closer value, which is how far your friend lives, because your friend is closer than you are. So let's divide by 3. The opposite of dividing by 3 is to multiply by 3. So how far you live is 0.9 times 3. It's 27 with 1 decimal place. So you live 2.7 miles away. Let's check our answer. Does it make sense? You live 3 times as far away, so you should live much farther away. If you live 2.7 miles, that is much farther than how far your friend lives, which is 0.9 miles, not even 1 mile away yet. Let's check our answer by substituting. 2.7 divided by 3 should equal 0.9. Let's write our division problem on the side. Doesn't go in, but it will go in 9 times. And that is correct. So you live 2.7 miles from the school. Let's try another example, a multiplication equation example. So to solve this multiplication example, we're going to use the inverse property, which is the division property of equality. 1.5v equals negative 9. The opposite of multiplying by 1.5 is dividing by 1.5. 1.5 divided by 1.5 cancels to 1. 1 times v is v. So we've isolated our variable. Now we need to simplify the math portion. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. I'm going to put it in my answer so I don't forget about it. And I have 9 and 1.5. I can't divide with a decimal on the outside, so I'm going to move it over 1 and move it over 1. So 15 into 90 is 6. Let's check our answer. 15 times 6, 30, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. So my answer is 6. V equals negative 6. And let's go back and check our work. 1.5, I'm going to substitute negative 6 in place of v. So 1.5 times 6, negative 6. My answer is going to be negative. That's good because our answer is negative here. 6 times 5 is 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 with 1 decimal place. Yes, so our answer is negative 9. So v does equal negative 6. Let's try an example here of using division property of equality. The opposite of multiplying by negative 23 is dividing by negative 23. Negative 23 divided by negative 23 is 1. 1 times y is y. We have to divide. Positive divided by a negative, so let's make sure we put our negative in our answer. 128 divided by 23. Well, 23 will not go into 12, so we need to do some guess and check. 23 is about 20, and 128 is about 130. 20 will go into 130 about 6 times, so that would be a good guess to try. So I'm going to try 23 times 6. We're estimating there. 3 times 6 is 18, and 2 times 6 is 12, 13. So that is too high. So let's do 23 times 5. Will give me 15, 10, 11. So that one works out. So we're going to do 5 here. So I can see that I'm going to have to extend my division problem. So it'll go in 5 times and it'll give me 115. 8 minus 5 is 3. And 2 minus 1 is 1. It's a decimal. I'm going to bring down the 0. 23 into 130. I'm going to try about 6 times. 12, 13. Oh, I already tried it here and it was too high. So once again, we're going to go for 5 times, which is 115. 10 minus 5 is 5. I borrowed 2 minus 1 is 1. Bring down the 0. After this decimal place, we'll just round it. So bring down the 0 here, and it'll go in, this time I know it's going to go about 6 times. So 138, 10 minus 8 is 2, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So I'm going to round it to the 10th place value. Any number 5 or above will tell me to round it up. So 5.56 is going to be about 5.6. So y equals 5.6. And we already said our answer was negative, so negative 5.6. I'm going to use this substitution here and substitute it back in place for this y. So negative 5.6 times negative 23. Negative times a negative is a positive. Good. My answer is a positive. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 5 is 15. 16. Hold the place. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry 1. 2 times 5 is 10. Plus 1 is 11. 8, 6, 7, 8, 2, 1. So it's about 128.8. So it looks like my answer is correct. So y equals negative 5.6. That one was a little tougher because we had to extend our decimal. And since we know our answer, and we know our answer is not going to be exact because we did round it, but we can tell from checking our work that the answer is very close. An elephant's height is about 5.5 times the length of his hind footprint. Use an equation to find the approximate height of an elephant whose hind footprint is 1.3 feet long. So let's read this problem again. An elephant's height is about 5.5 times the length of his hind footprint. So his back footprint times 5.5 is going to be how high he is. Use an equation to find the approximate height of an elephant whose hind footprint is 1.3. So his height equals 5.5 times his footprint. Call it F for footprint. So you can do this equation a few ways. We're looking for his height, so we could leave the unknown h, and we know the footprint is 1.3, so we could substitute 5.5 times 1.3. 5.5 times 1.3. 15, 15, 16, 0, 5, 5. 5, 11, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. 2 places, so 2 places here. So the height of this elephant is 7.15 feet. Another way you could do this is to say that his height divided by 5.5 times would equal his hind foot, 1.3. So the opposite of divide by 5.5 is times 5.5. This cancels to 1. And his height equals 1.3 times 5.5. Notice that that is exactly where we were on the last equation. This is very similar. So his height is 7.15 feet. Let's check and make sure we've answered the question. Use an equation to find the approximate height. So here's our equation. And his approximate height is 7.15 feet. All right, here's another example where we need to set up a multiplication equation that we're going to solve by using the division property of equality. So Julie makes 1.25 times the amount of money that Mary makes. If Mary makes $35,000, how much does Julie make? We're going to write and solve an equation. So first off, let's try to understand what the problem is saying. Julie makes more than Mary does because she not only makes 100% or 1 times what Mary makes, she also makes an additional 0.25 or 25%. So when we get our final answer, we want to make sure that Julie is making more than $35,000. So if we want to do this arithmetic with arithmetic, we could say 1.25 times $35,000 will give us what Julie makes. So let's do that on the side here. 0, 0, 0, 25, 2, 15, 16, 17. Hold the place for the 0. And then 1, 2, 3 zeros. 2 times 5 is 10. Carry 1. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. And next, hold 2 places and 3 zeros. And 1 times 35. And 6 plus 7 is 13, and carry 1. 3 plus 1, 43, with 2 decimal places. So $43,750. That sounds correct because she does make a bit more than Mary makes. Let's try this equation using a variable. So what we don't know is how much Julie makes. So Julie's going to be our variable, J. And we're going to divide that by 1.25 to return to how much Mary makes. So here we've written an equation. J, Julie's amount, divided by 1.25 equals 35,000. The opposite of dividing by 1.25 is to multiply by 1.25. And those cancel, and we've isolated J. And here you can see, luckily, we've already done the multiplication, 35,000 times 1.25. And our answer is, when we multiply, 43,750. So we've written the equation, J divided by 1.25 equals $35,000, Mary's amount. And we've solved the equation. Julie makes $43,750. Thank you for watching educator.com.